Okay, we're ready. Good evening. Once, thank you for being back with us tonight. Our subject matter is the fourth commandment, which covers family and social relationship. Well, if you read the fourth commandment, it simply says, "Honor thy father and thy mother," and you would think that it is so limited in scope. But as I explained before, you know, the Ten Commandments amazingly cover the entire spectrum of Catholic morality. So if we get into the spirit of the law, we will understand more fully how comprehensive every single commandment that God
Commandment
has
that God
given us.
has given us.
Right.
Right?
So,
So,
oh, can we correct that echo? Are we okay? All right. So the fourth commandment, while it just reads honor your father and your mother, it does cover all kinds of relationship. Okay. Now we all know that relationship is pivotal. Firstly, we know that we broke our relationship with God when our first parents disobeyed Him, and that and the consequences was a total disruption of our harmony with our Creator. So, as a matter of fact, everything became everything around us was disturbed by that broken harmony. So, we all know that any failed relationship can bring about some devastating effect. It can bring about disruption of order. It can disturb peace around us, right? And relationship is not easy. It can be very difficult, especially with those who are close to us. Consider that, as Sister Gigi has mentioned in her prayer, we have some kind of a generational divide with the millennials, Generation X, and the young people, especially in our family. So, relationship should take into consideration our differences in culture and, as we say, different folks, different strokes. So, we need to be able to strike the balance in our relationship with anyone, with everyone, and even with the institution in put in place to us by God. It can be very difficult, but we must understand that there should never be a time when we just give up on our relationship. In other words, we should exert our best effort to be able to repair any broken relationship. And most important of all is that we are able to pray for someone with whom we have had differences. So we must understand that we cannot just love the lovable. Jesus Christ said, "If you love only those who love us, what good is that?" Even the pagans do that. So we really need to get into the guidance of the church on how we can maintain good relationship, because failed relationship can have a range of emotional, even psychological and social consequences. It can lead to feelings of anxiety, stress, or even grief, loss. And then a betrayal of a broken relationship can result in trust issues, making it difficult to trust others in future relationships. We can be isolated from families and friends, and it can adversely affect our group dynamics and even our friendship. So, but if we have good relationship, if we uh, try our best to be able to maintain a good relationship, it is vital for the overall functioning of society. It contributes to a holistic and fulfilling life. Uh, you know, like for instance, we among us husbands, we say happy wife, happy life. So it does bring about happiness, a good relationship. Okay, uh, it fosters our well-beings and social cohesion, and of course our personal growth. So as you can see in this slide, uh, we should learn uh, to honor. Okay, we should fear God and love God so that we do not show contempt for our parents and others in authority, nor provoke them to anger. But what is important in relationship is that we learn to respect, obey, serve, love, and honor those with whom we are relating with. So, of course, so that it follows that it forbids any disrespect for person in authority, any disobedience, and with all the relationship that we have with different groups. Okay, so we learned tonight that the fourth commandment is actually the foundation of the second table of the law. The two tables of the law, as we know, is the first table of the law is about loving God, and the second table of the law is about loving our neighbor. We cannot separate between loving God and loving our neighbor. I know a question has been asked. What is more difficult, to love God or to love our neighbor? Probably everybody will have will state in chorus that it is more difficult to love our neighbor than to love God. Well, that seems not to be in conjunction with the basic teaching of the church, because the basic teaching of the church is that we cannot say we love God if we do not love our neighbor. So it is part and parcel of loving God to be able to love our neighbor. Okay. So now we are going to start with the point of origin and source of all other relationship, and that is of course our relationship with God. So as a matter of fact, we should always bear in mind that God is involved in all our relationship, right? There's no such thing as private relationship. God is always with it. God is always in it. So we have several natural relationship. We have the relationship between parents and children. There you are. Of course, we have relationship between husband and wife. Husband and wife relationship is a relationship that must be maintained till death do them part. So you see those young couples growing together as old couples and still together till this is the reason why we are going to have a separate lesson when it comes to the relationship between husband and wife, because this pertains to a very sacred relationship more than any other relationship. This one is really sacred. It is a sacramental relationship. So we are going to devote one session, as a matter of fact next session after our break, that is, we are going to talk about the sanctity of the married husband and wife relationship. We have relationship between rulers and citizens, and we have relationship also between masters and servants. Okay, so we will deal with all these relationships one by one tonight. So we start with the essence of relationship. This is one thing very important. We proceed from the fundamental principle that all men are created equal. We are all equal. There's no one who is superior than the other. So, bearing that in mind, we will be able to appreciate that while there is such a thing as authority, it does not in any way affect our equality with one another. So we'll talk about authority and we'll talk about obedience to authority. Okay. Authority. All authority comes from God. Okay. See there, God's authority in the family. The father and the mother have authority over their children, but their authority is derived from God. The government, the national leaders have authority over local authorities and the citizens. S- The church, we have our church leaders, and their authority also comes from God, as well as in business, the employers and the employees. So that is primordial in the understanding of relationship. We are supposed to be submissive to authority based on obeying God, because God is, we are simply, when we are submitting to authority, we are simply, and when we are exercising authority, we are actually only transmitting God's authority. That is an authority of servanthood. Actually, everything about us is servanthood. If you want to be great in the kingdom of heaven, you need to be the servant of all. So, what about obedience? As I said, the mere fact that you are called to obey does not make you inferior to your superior. You are still equal. Give you a specific example. Christ Himself. Christ Himself is one with the Father. He is equal with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Yet He obeyed the Father even unto His death. So inferior obedience is not a sign of inferiority nor a sign of weakness or servility, but it is imitating the obedience of our Lord Jesus Christ, obeying His Father in heaven. All right. So the first relationship that we are going to establish, as we all know, of course, we all agree, is the family relationship, right? So the first thing we need to know, what is a family? Paragraph 2202 of the Catechism defines what a family is: a man and a woman. So, right off the bat, family consists of a man and a woman. That is the reason why the church will never countenance or validate the partnership of a man of same-sex people as as forming a family. They are just that, probably partners. All right. Even if they adopt, you can't say that that is of itself is a family, but rather they are partners trying to rear up a child, because a family has been defined as a man and a woman united in marriage together with their children. One fundamental principle that we need to always keep in mind is that the family is prior to any recognition by public authority, okay, which has obligation to recognize it. The family is not invented by man. It is designed by God prior to the state in origin, and it cannot be reinvented. Okay, so that is a very important principle that we need to understand, that the family is God's design, and the state does not hold, the family does not hold its right from the state. Okay, but unfortunately, more often than not, the family has been very much ignored by the state or by the government. Okay, they they have overestimated their function in the family, and we will understand this when we talk about the principle of subsidiarity. The role of the state in the family is very limited. The family is supposed to be run by the parents primarily. Okay, so we must understand that the family, being the nucleus of society, is actually the original cell of social life. Paragraph 2207 speaks of this fact. The family is the original cell of social life. Authority, stability, and a life of relationship within the family constitute the foundations for freedom, security, and fraternity within society. Because society is comprised of families. The family is the community in which, from childhood, that is where you learn, you form your moral values. That's where you start beginning to be introduced to God, to honor God, make use of your how to make use of your freedom properly. Okay, so it is our initiation to the society, and the society. If we have dysfunctional families in a certain community, then it would result in what? A dysfunctional society. Okay? So we it is very important that we make families a healthy institution for initiation of life in society. So this is what we need to understand then, what we call the principle of subsidiarity. This has been very much mentioned by Pope John Paul II, and it is enshrined in paragraph 2209. So let's understand what is this principle of subsidiarity. The family must be helped and defended by appropriate levels. Where families cannot fulfill their responsibilities, keep that in mind. Only when families cannot fulfill their responsibilities will social bodies have a role in the family. Okay, other social bodies have the duty of helping them and of supporting them. Okay, that is when the families cannot fulfill their responsibilities. So, following the principle of subsidiarity, the larger communities should take care not to usurp the family's prerogatives or interfere in its life. No usurpation of function. The functions in the family is primarily lodged in the parents. Okay, the state must only foster and not define what is good for the family. It only has the duty to help the family when parents' failure is obvious. Okay, so it does not take a village, because some of our politicians are always saying that it takes a village to build a good family. No, it takes the parents to build a good family. Only the parents. It's only when the parents are unable to do so should the government or any local authority come to the fore and help out, just to help out, not to control, not to usurp. Okay, that is the principle of subsidiarity. Okay, given all those fundamental principles, we are now ready to go into the different duties in this relationship. First, we have the duties of parents to their children. You know, you can see in this slide there, the parents' responsibilities. They had the responsibility to provide a home for their children, to provide themselves their own presence, to make themselves available. That we are going to take up tonight more. We will expound on that particular point. Make themselves available. They provide for their physical needs. They provide for their spiritual nourishment. They provide for their teaching and guidance and instruction, and also, of course, discipline. Those are the responsibilities of the parents. The parents are like they always bring their children with them, especially the young children. So they're like being in an elevator with the parents. The parents are responsible in bringing them up to a higher level or bringing them down to a lower level. So they're like right there in the elevator, and you can see if how much they have done for their family. The scripture says, "By the fruit you shall know them." So the parents have a lot to do with how the children conduct themselves when they are grown up. But of course, there's always an exception to that. Sometimes the parents would have already done everything that they could. They have no fault of their own, but still, while they have guided their children, that does not mean that they can prevail over the children all the time, because they have their own minds. Especially in our culture, they're so independent minded, and some of them are really strong headed, and so we cannot blame ourselves for that too. But as long as we do our part, then we can say that we are doing our role as parents. So let's define first uh, the different obligations of the parents towards their children. Number one, of course, is to provide for their physical as well as spiritual needs. provide for their education. Respect is very important. Respect them for as children of God. Advise them, but avoid undue pressure in their choice of spouse or profession. We'll take this up one by one. So we'll start with the duty of the parents to provide for their physical and spiritual needs. First, the physical. That includes the providing for their psychological needs. So the parents naturally have the obligation to provide their children food, shelter, clothing, health and medical care, and very important. I'd like to hone in on this one: personal supervision. Parents are not supposed to leave the supervision of the children to to the nurse, to the caretakers, even to the school. It has to be a personal supervision. They have to find time for them. I know a lot of parents are saying, I may not have time because I have a lot of work to do, but whenever I spend time with my parents, I make sure that it is quality time. I'd like to I'd like to discuss that with you. What is really quality time? Does that mean that you don't need to really spend time with your children that much? Well, I'd like to share with you this article about the best expression of love is time. It's the more time you give to something, the more you reveal its importance, right? Where wherever whatever, if you put a lot of time on something, that is something that you really value, okay, and value it for you. If you want to know a person's priorities, just look at how they use their time. Okay, when you give someone your time, you are giving them a portion of your life, and you'll never get it back. So once you're given your time for them, you're not going to relive that time. That is, time does not repeat itself. So your time is your life. You're giving part of your life. That is why the greatest gift you can give to someone is your time. It is not enough just to say relationships are important. We must prove it by giving them our time. So really quantity time really makes up quality time. So don't make excuses by saying I don't have much time, but when I spend time with my children, I give them quality time. No, quantity is part of the quality time. So the length of time you spend with children, makes up quality time. Okay. Sometimes some parents would always complain, I don't understand my wife and kids. I provide everything they need. When the father is so busy, he's the breadwinner of the family. But I provide everything for them. What more do they want? You must understand. They want you, your eyes, your ears, your time, your attention, your presence, your focus, your time. So you should have personal supervision of your children. Don't leave it to any other people or to any institution. Okay, you should look at you should supervise the company that they go with, supervise the what it is that they're reading, the shows that they are watching, their activities. You know, you should learn how to discipline them. But of course, taking the counsel and in paragraph in Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4, yes, you should discipline them, but do not provoke them. In other words, important also in relationship with your children, maintain friendship with your children. Okay, don't be so patriarchal or matriarchal for this. I mean, when you are so commanding, almost all children resent that. But at the same time, as I said, you should strike the balance on how you can discipline them at the same time. But what is important is you are able to maintain a friendly relationship with your children. Okay, so parents are trusted to the care of their children. They are they only provide they don't just provide material needs, but also training and discipline. Those are very important aspect of the duty of the parents in regard to their children. And then, of course, the spiritual needs. It is the primordial obligation of the parents to provide their children religious and moral training. You know what? The family is actually the church, the domestic church. It is their first church. It is a place where they can first uh, get to know who God is. It is a place. It is the domestic church where they learn how to pray together, okay, and learn the scripture. So as much as possible, try to pray with your children. Once they learn how to pray, guide them how to pray, and pray with them. As Father Peyton said, the family that prays together stays together, and that's how you can enhance your family. Okay, so and of course, very important too. y- Parents should learn how to give them good example. Okay, that is the most effective way to educate and to teach your children in the ways of the Lord. Your example. Avoid any form of not being able to practice what you teach or what you preach, because that will be scandalizing. It is worse scenario when the parents actually scandalize their children. Jesus Christ does not mince word about people who scandalize, especially people in your family. It is better that a millstone be tied around your neck and be thrown into the sea. That's what Jesus said. So it is important that you give them good example. Okay, and maintain friendship with them and acknowledge your failings. I I know that parents probably would have so much pride as to admit to their children that they committed something that is not right. It is important that we develop that parents should develop that they are able to acknowledge whatever wrong they have done and even apologize to their children. Learn how to say, I'm sorry, my child, I'm sorry, I was wrong there. If that would be the best example we can give our children, the humility to admit our mistake. So give them good example. So that's a very important duty of the parent, physical and spiritual, provide for their physical and spiritual needs. Another important duty of the parent is providing them with education. Paragraph 2221. The role of parents in education is of such importance that it is almost impossible to provide an adequate substitute. Don't get anything to substitute your role. The right and duty of the parents to educate their children are primordial and inalienable. So whenever you can, stand up for your children's right, and stand up for your right too. Okay. Paragraph 2229. Parents have the right to choose a school for them which corresponds to their own convictions. Okay. Especially in regard to sex education. That is a very important role of the parents. Don't leave it for the children to learn about sex in school or elsewhere. It should start from home. Okay, Familiaris Consortio, an encyclical written by Pope John Paul II, is very emphatic about this. All right, let me read to you Familiaris Consortio, which says that the church is firmly opposed to an often widespread form of imparting sex education dissociated with moral principles. So whenever you teach them on matters of sex, It should always be associated with the moral principle. Sex education, which is a basic right and duty of parents, not anyone else, must always be carried out under their attentive guidance, whether at home or in educational centers chosen and controlled by them. That's Familiaris Consortio, encyclical of Pope John Paul II. So, uh, unfortunately, unfortunately, what has been happening now, m- most parents just leave it to for the school to educate them in matters of sex. Okay, the government, as you are aware, to a great extent, has appropriated this particular role under the pretext of a school curriculum. They include that in the school curriculum and makes it available to carry out sex education. Right? Sometimes this really leads to deformation of consciences. In some societies, professional associations of sex educators, so-called sex counselors, sex therapists, are operating in school. Parents should regard this with great caution. Abuse occurs whenever sex education is given to children. By teaching them all even the intimate details of genital relationship, even in a graphic way, dissociated with any moral principle. Today, it is often motivated by wanting to provide education for safe sex. That's their pretext. We educate them so that they will have safe sex, above all in relation to the spread of AIDS. In this situation, parents must reject the promotion of so-called safe sex or safer sex. Not safe sex or safer sex. It should be parents should always insist on continence outside marriage and fidelity in marriage. In other words, no sex until you get married. Okay, so this is so important for us to really learn as parents. Never leave sex education to the government institution. Okay, and they must respect their children as children of God. If you're in a patriarchal society, the father is always just the boss, is just the commander, and all that. No, just as how God relates to us as our father, so must the parents be, because we must respect them as your children of God. Okay, seeing your child as a person who has wants, who has needs, who has feelings, desires, a mind of their own. All of those must be taken into consideration. Okay, so you balance your discipline with compassion, and then maintain friendship with them, have some fun with them too, and guidance with independence. Okay, so those are so pivotal in bringing up your children. Respect is very important. It's just not because you are the parent, you always demand respect, but you do not respect them. It's symbiotic. They respect you, you respect them. They are their own persons too. Okay, so you should always acknowledge our failings too. As I mentioned a while ago, when we are wrong, let them know we are wrong. Have the humility, so we are equal again, uh, in line with the basic principle of obedience and authority. Not just because you're a parent, you consider yourself superior to your children. No, you're still equal with your children. Okay. And another obligation of the parents: avoid undue pressure in the choice of profession and the spouse of your son or daughter. Okay. You you submit them to so much pressure if you try to practically dictate to them the course that they're supposed to take, or the spouse that they're supposed to the person that they're going to marry. So paragraph 22 30 of the catechism is very clear about that. Children, when they become adults, they have the right and duty to choose. That is their right. It is not your right to impose on them. It is their right to choose their own profession and state of life. Profession. Let's say just because you're a lawyer, you want your child to be a lawyer. Just because you're a doctor, you impose on your child to be a doctor. You can give advice. Okay, well, we'll go on reading here. They should assume their new responsibilities within a trusting relationship with their parents, willingly asking and receiving their advice and counsel. Okay, that's great. Parents should be careful not to exert pressure on their children, either in the choice of profession or in that of a spouse. This necessary restraint does not prevent them, quite the contrary, from giving their children judicious advice. Okay, give them judicious advice, particularly when they are planning to start a family. Just give your advice, and then you've done your part. But never impose upon them, because they are their own persons. They are going to grow up and they will be on their own. There will come a time when you will no longer be part of them in the sense that that they have their own family, right? So I hope we have a better appreciation of how our parents are. Most of us here are already grandparents. At least we can share this with our children who are newly married or who are just planning to get married. Okay. Now let's go to the duties of the children to their parents. All right. Respect is very important. A child should always respect their parent. Respect for parent never goes away. It never goes away because the parents brought them into this world. The parents uh, participated in the procreative power of God. So they were brought to this world and they were nurtured by their parents. So children should be really very respectful with their parents. Just talking back to your parents, and I think that's very usual in our culture here in the States. That parents just they don't even address their parents, mom and dad anymore. You can you imagine addressing? I don't know about you, but when we were young, it would be unthinkable to be addressing your mom instead of mom. Hey, Aurora. Let's say my mom's name is Aurora. But some children here just do it. Just do that. I mean, they just address their mother or their father by their first name, and that doesn't seem to be really respectful at all. Okay, so you need to help them. The children have to learn how to help their parents too. Pray for them especially. Okay, and when they are refusing corrections from the parents, that is a form of disrespect too, especially if the what the parents asking for is something good for them. Okay, so they have the obligation to obey them, but only in matters that are not sinful. Of course, you don't obey your parents when they're asking you to do something that is immoral or sinful. Okay, but obeying them must be coupled with that attitude of willingness. You just If you obey grudgingly, that's not really obeying them, is it? Okay, and keep this in mind: for as long as your children, whether they're already past the minor age, for as long as they are living with their parents, the duty of obedience is still upon them. Okay. Then, once they're emancipated, they live on their own, they have their own family, then they are relieved from that particular obligation of obedience to the extent that they have to rule their own family. Okay? All right. But respect, as I said, should always be there. It's never uh, taken away. as the right of the parents to be respected. And I think not so many people, especially here in the United States, understand that the children do have the obligation to support their parents at their old age. Okay, they have to provide them material and moral support, especially during their time of illness, loneliness, or distress. Okay, because there will come a time when the parents really grow old, and there will be some kind of a inversion of roles where the children like become like their parents of the parents, right? And the parents becomes like their children of their children. Inversion of roles, and that is even recognized in Scripture that the children have the obligation to support their parents in their need. We can glean that in Mark chapter 7, starting with verse 10 and following, where we have this so-called principle of korban. That means that uh, in order to be able to avoid your obligation to support your parents, you dedicate a certain portion of your wealth for the support of the church. That is wrong, and Jesus Christ pointed out. Okay, Moses said, "Honor your father and your mother, and whoever curses father or mother shall die." Yet you say, if a person says to father or mother, any support you might have had from me. In other words, it's recognized by Scripture that the parents do have to be supported by their children. But if you know how they go around it, they say, "Hey, this is korban. I have dedicated this to the service of God." No, that's not dedication to the service of God. You are now transgressing one of the rules of relationship between parents and children. You have the duty to support your parents when they are in it. I hope our children will understand that. Of course, they have the obligation to respect and obey also. Now, another kind of relationship, uh, lawful superiors. We have guardians, right? Um, who are the guardians? When we are in school, our teachers act like our guardians. Of course, our godparents, they have to help the parents in for their spiritual guidance. That is, but of course, the primary obligation is upon the parents to provide spiritual guidance to their children. But godparents, you just don't uh, act as godparents, not understanding the role of a godparent. A godparent is supposed to give moral guidance to help the parents in giving the children, the godson or the godchild, um, uh, spiritual guidance. Okay, the grandparents, they are guardians too. Okay, when they take care of them, yeah, in place of the parents, sometimes we have what we call the apostolate. Yeah, that's a common term we use in the Filipino community. Apostolate means you have that you have that ministry of caring for your grandkids. Apo is grandkid. Okay, we have the relationship between employers and supervisors. We have the relationship among legitimate civil authorities, our government. You know, our government derived their authority from God. In John chapter 19, verse 11, when Pilate was reminding Jesus, "Do you not know that I have authority over life and death over you at this time?" And how did Jesus respond? You would not you would not have any authority over me at all unless it has been given to you. Check it out, John chapter 19:11. In other words, those in authority derive their responsibility from God. They derive their obligation to transmit God's authority over their subject. And then we have ecclesial superiors, and of course the priests, the bishops, our pope, and then We have also the duties of lawful superiors. Okay, what are the duties of lawful superiors? Take care of those entrusted to them, seek the common good of everyone under their care, and the employers. This is, if you are an employer, you should keep in mind that it is your obligation to provide sufficient uh, facilities, okay, uh, provide a living wage and ample facilities to your employees, and also to ensure that they fulfill their religious duties. And of course, public officials must exercise their authority as public servants. We should always remind our public officials that they are, in fact, public servants. They are supposed to serve us, not to rule us with stern hands and authority, because authority is not might or power, but authority is transmitting the love of God to them. So they have the obligation to promote general welfare. Okay. Let's go now to the duties and responsibilities of our citizens. The citizens have the duty to be obedient to the lawful authorities. Very important here, unless it is contrary to God's law. We will take this up separately here in a while, in a bit. Okay, so we should obey the lawful authorities. Pay taxes. Okay, when the catechism came out, everybody was just uh, you know. A little bit surprised why this has to be taken up in the catechism. But it does say that we have the obligation to pay taxes. So that's not engaged in tax evasion, But tax avoidance is okay. I know you should know the difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance, right? Tax avoidance is availing of the exemptions provided for by law. But when you evade taxes, you are in fact committing an immoral act. And very important, of course, is the right to vote. I'd like to remind you, most especially us, when we exercise our vote, pay particular attention to the people you vote to the school board. Examine all these candidates for the school board because they are the ones running the school. And more often than not, when it comes to the school board, we just scan over our ballot and not really take time to examine who are the people who are the candidates for the school board. It's very important because they are the ones who are going to shape how the how morality is taught in school. Sometimes they think they do teach immorality in school instead of morality. So exercise that particular right to vote, especially in matters of voting for people that will sit in the school board. Fulfill their roles in the life of the political community. See how you can help the government. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. That's a very familiar. Uh, and then, of course, defend your country in times of self-defense of the country. We are obligated to be part of it. Right. Important thing that I need to take up with you here is this paragraph 2242 of the Catechism in regard to obeying God rather than man. The citizen is obliged in conscience not to follow the directives of civil authorities. You are obliged not to follow. You are obliged to have civil disobedience when the civil authorities enact laws that are contrary to the demands of the moral order, to the fundamental rights of persons and the teachings of the gospel. We obey God rather than man. Refusing obedience to civil authorities, civil disobedience, when their demands are contrary to those of an upright conscience, finds its justification in the distinction between serving God and serving political community. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God. So there are some laws that are enacted that are immoral, and we are not supposed to follow those laws. Like laws that violate the sanctity of human life. The families that promote to allow abortion, euthanasia, or other forms of violence against life. Okay, include situations where civil authorities are mandated to facilitate such practices. I know of one who owns a pharmacy, and he was being required to make available in his pharmacy all these contraceptive drugs, or any, paraphernalia and all that, and he refused to do so. And you know what, he just closed the pharmacy, closed his business, just so, because he was so much under pressure by the government. Okay, he was being obliged to dispense of these uh, things that promote um, abortion or euthanasia, and any law that violates the human dignity of a person, any laws that promote discrimination, racism, or sexism, you're not supposed to follow that. Any laws that undermine the common good, those that promote corruption, injustice, or the abuse of power, or any laws that violate religious freedom. We don't feel this much, but in communist countries, especially, they are supposed not to follow, such as those that restrict the exercise of religious practices or beliefs. Any laws that violate any of the natural law, such as those that promote immoral behaviors or practices. So that is, the best way, as they say, the best way for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. There must be civil obedience when it comes to these civil laws. Civil disobedience is okay if we are pursuing our obedience to God rather than man. Okay, duties of nations, common for common good of persons, foreign, welcome foreigners. Immigration is good, but it should be within the immigration law. Avoid any excessive intervention and this principle of subsidiarity. Only when a particular small community is not able to perform its function as such, that the government should come to the fore, but only to help, but not to usurp their authority. Okay? All right. I believe very important is also friendship. Friendship can be raised up to a level of almost like a natural relationship. So that's why sometimes with our friends we say, "You're like a brother to me. You're like a sister to me." But the principle of friendship must always be borne in mind. Okay, uh, it has to follow the general moral teachings on love, virtue, self-giving, care, respect, genuine concern for one another. So these are five signs of a true friend. Respect. We must respect always our friend. Respect their opinion too. I mean, try to give advice, but only to that extent. Respect their dignity and equality. You should be honest with them, loyalty, trustworthy with them. These are signs of a good friend. Okay, if you're honest, loyal, and trustworthy. If you're not trustworthy, you cannot be a good friend. Genuine concern, mutual support, encouragement, moral responsibility is very important. If you are morally responsible, you will not gossip your friend. You will not betray your friend. You will not manipulate your friend. You will not exploit your friend. It is in accordance with your moral responsibility to treat yourself like your equal and like your natural relationship, and maintaining like a natural relationship with them and seeking the friend's highest good. All right. So uh, I hope we learned something tonight, and I'll now stop the sharing and we